In order to achieve the two-tone effect on our passive amplifiers, we're going to stain before we glue it up. That way our stain colors don't mix with each other. Since we're using water-based stain and water-based glue, we can stain first, then glue. Now a couple things. First off, make sure you have all the materials you need before you start. You have your stain, you have your rags and both your parts. Make sure that all the fine sanding is done and they're ready to go. Also, since it is stain, it'll stain your hands, it'll stain your clothes, and it doesn't come out. So make sure you're being careful with your clothes. Make sure you're wearing gloves so it doesn't get on your hands. Take a rag, and you don't need very much. Just take a little bit on the end of the rag, and then you can work it into the board. The main thing you need to watch out for are streaks. Dark streaks of stain will ruin the look of your project, so make sure that you have those worked out. Any stripes or straight looking stripes that you see are probably from the stain and not from the wood. The wood grain in this birch plywood is very light, so you're not going to see very much of it. If you see any dark spots, odds are it's stain. You want to get that out. I would suggest using a light color stain on the speaker cone. That way any glue that may be sticking out is going to be hidden. Wood glue tends to turn stain white. You can see a little bit on the edge there. If you use a dark stain, that's really going to pop out on the cone. If you use a light colored stain, it tends to hide it a little better. And again, stain until, or work it in with the rag until you have any of those streaks gone. I like to leave the back side of the rag dry so I can come back and wipe with that. So the outside is done. You can see there's a little bit of glue there, those white spots. Now you can do the inside and the front edge. The inside is a little tricky. You just have to kind of jam your rag in there and then wipe back to get any extra stuff out of it. Take your time, do a good job. This isn't a process that you want to start at the end of the hour so that you're rushed. I would say don't start staining unless you have at least 20 minutes or half an hour left in the class period. Inside the cone is a little bit tricky. You just got to kind of put the rag in there and go from there. Now as you're doing this, it's easy to get fingerprints on the outside of your amplifier cone. So make sure that you're coming back with your dry rag and getting those fingerprints out if you can. Because the stain, especially this water-based stain, really tends to leave splotches. So you got to do a good job of working it in and getting in those edges. You guys notice in the video, this is taking me a while, and that's okay. Take your time and do a good job. Because no matter how good of a job you do sanding and cutting accurately and everything else, the stain doesn't look good. That's all that people are going to notice about your final project. And then you're going to stain the end, just the front side of your cone as well. You don't have to stain the inside edge because that's going to be glued against the base. Now it's easy to get a lot of stain blotches doing this process, so make sure you come back, check out any spots where you may have blotchy stain, and wipe that out. you can set your cone up like this inside of your cubby to dry. The process for staining your amplifier base is similar. Again, take some stain. If you're using a darker stain, go ahead and use those same gloves and rub it in. Now these darker stains are a lot thicker than the lighter stains, so make sure that you really come back and wipe off any of that blotchiness. Otherwise it's going to leave it on your board and really do a poor job of it. You should see the grain through. You want to be able to see the grain through stain. That's the idea. If we wanted to cover up the wood grain, we would use paint instead. The better job you use sanding, the better the stain is going to take into the wood. On top, I would say don't stain inside where the phone is going to go because it'll be impossible to get everything in there. Just take your time and stain carefully around the top edge so it doesn't drip inside of there at all. Again, you can see these little blotches of stain. With this dark stain, it picks up on your fingers, on your gloves, so make sure you come back any place that you touch with your gloves and clean that up. It's easy mistakes to make. And I'll stain the bottom as well. Now you can see on here there's a lot of stain on that rag that time, so I'm going to come back and really wipe that off. You'll notice that after it's wiped off, the grain shows through, and it's a lot nicer looking finish. You can set this face up just like this in your cubby to dry. After a full day of drying, then we'll come back and we'll glue up the next class day. Make sure that your rags go in the trash can. Since it's water-based, we don't have to worry about fire, so you throw them right in the trash. And the covers go back on the correct can of stain. You pick your paper up and it looks good when you're done.